Hi everybody. This presentation will cover some additional topics of organic chemistry. The first topic that we'll cover will include functional groups that are part of many organic compounds. The functional groups we'll discuss will be limited to alcohol, amine, carboxyl group or carboxylic acids, esters, ethers, ketones, and aldehydes. Please note that functional groups help to determine the properties of different organic compounds. With an alcohol functional group, we will find an oxygen bonded to a hydrogen atom. Here's an example of a molecule with an alcohol functional group. We can see the functional group is right here. That's the OH. And we can see that the R group in this case would be a methyl. That's a carbon with two hydrogens bonded to it. So this would be called methyl alcohol or methanol. Here's a second example of a molecule that contains an alcohol functional group. That's the OH right here. In this case, the R group is this carbon and the hydrogens that are bonded to them. In this case, that would be an ethyl group, so this would be called ethyl alcohol or ethanol. Here's an example of an amine. Please note the nitrogen, which is bonded to two hydrogen atoms. Here's an example of a molecule that has an amine functional group. We can see that located right here on the molecule. We have a nitrogen which is bonded to two hydrogens. Everything else that we see here would be considered that R group, where we have variability in what we can insert into our molecule. This is actually a model of an amino acid. I'll use it again later in this presentation. Amino acids are given their name in part because of the amine functional group. Again, this is the amino acid alanine. Here's an example of a carboxyl group or a carboxylic acid. Please note the carbon, which is double bonded to one oxygen, and then there's a single bond to a second oxygen, which has a hydrogen single bonded to it. Let's take another look at that alanine molecule. This time we'll focus on this side of the molecule, where we have a carbon double bonded to an oxygen, and then we have another oxygen which is bonded to a hydrogen. So this is considered a carboxyl group or a carboxylic acid. Please note that we would not consider this to be an alcohol functional group because we are considering the entire thing to be a carboxyl group. Now the overall molecule, the rest of what we're looking at right over here would be considered the R group. Again, we said that this is an amino acid. It's getting its name from this carboxylic acid functional group and the amine functional group, so this is where the name amino acid comes from. Here we see an example of an ester functional group. Please note the R and R prime, and then we find the carbon double bonded to an oxygen, which is bonded to an oxygen, which is bonded to an R group. Here's an example of an ester. We can see that we have the R group and the R prime group over here. We find that there's an oxygen, and then we have a second oxygen which is double bonded to this carbon right here. Here is an example of an ether functional group. Please note we have R bonded to an O bonded to R prime. Here's an example of an ether. We can see again we have an R group, we have an R prime group. Please note if we have R and R primes, they don't necessarily have to be the same thing. And we're identifying this as an ether because there's an oxygen bonded between the R and the R prime groups. Here's an example of a ketone functional group. Please note an R group, an R prime group, the carbon which is bonded to an oxygen atom. Here's an example of a molecule that has a ketone functional group. We can see that there's a double bond forming to this oxygen here, and this is actually attached onto a carbon ring structure. Here is an example of an aldehyde functional group. Please note the R group bonded to a carbon, which is double bonded to an oxygen bonded to a hydrogen atom. Here's an example of a molecule with an aldehyde functional group. We see the double bond to this oxygen right here. This one is formaldehyde, which used to commonly be used to preserve specimens for dissection in biology classes. Here's another example of a molecule that has an aldehyde functional group. This one is called ethanal, and this is one of the major carcinogenic substances in tobacco smoke.